This is The Basketball Show with Shane the Hammer Hill. What they gonna say next?
Hello and welcome to The Basketball Show. I'm Nathan Stremple, once again filling in for Jo Healy this week as she's off in America having a good time. But Shane Hill, you're here and it's great to join you once again.
Yeah, a whole lot to talk about today. Lots of great basketball in the NBL and the WNBL.
Whole lot going on. Thank you to our friends at TCL, 2K23 and UPCOZ for making the show possible. Big shout out to our media partners, News Corp and KO Freebies. Now, a lot happening in basketball, a lot happening in your world that involves you and basketball too, Shane. And we're just going to make reference to a statement you made this week.
Yeah, mate, and thanks to all the people that have reached out just to see how I'm doing. But we'll briefly put this statement up. This show's, certainly not just about my situation here, and I'm not going to go into the detail. Those people who want to see that statement, I had to put something out in response to what the Sydney Flames had put out earlier in the day. Disappointing to go through this process, but litigation has started and we'll be going to court mid this year.
No doubt, not much fun, but the statement is there for people asking. Should we move on with the show?
Let's do it.
Moving into the big items for this week in basketball, it's time for the starting five, brought to you by TCL. And Shane, we start off with your favourite. I know that you just had the date marked in your calendar for ages. NBA AllStar Weekend. How about Mac McClung?
Well, how much did you watch, mate?
Not a lot.
Why is that?
I don't particularly care for the All-Star game, and I know you don't either. But I thought that was a great story. A kid that's in the G League, out of the NBA, in the space of the week, he's back in the NBA. He's a 24-year-old. He's not much taller than you. Dunk comp champion, 1.88 centimetres. He's now signed. He's got to deal with Puma. Not a bad week for the
We're about
fella.
the same size, and I could just get that black rubber on the backboard. How's that? Back in the NBA. What a week. Signed with Puma, wins the dunk contest, and we're talking about him in Australia. How things just change like that. Well done to him too.
Well done, mate. 188 centimetre dunk comp champion. Dame Lillard too, winning the three-point comp. Good on D. Lil getting it done. That's about all we've got for the All-Star Weekend. I'm sure Jo Healy will have more stories to tell when she gets back. Let's move forwards we are down to the NBL finals. We've got to wait 12 days until the series starts.
Unbelievable, really, isn't it? 12 days. And I know the NBL probably can't do anything about it because it's all about this FIBA window, and we're playing the almighty Kazakhstan team. So we're breaking for Kazakhstan.
For those asking questions, we're a NBL FIBA sanctioned league, so no FIBA sanctioned league can play during this FIBA window. So NBL don't have a choice; they can't play games during the window. So it's either get the series done before the window or resume it afterwards.
And plenty of AFL and rugby league and everything else that in 12 days' time it'll be interesting to see the crowds because it just stops momentum. I think as fans, I just wanted to see the games. I was looking straight away to see when the next game's coming around because I think it's going to be a great grand final series, but geez, I think we're going to lose some people.
Well, to play the other side, and let's move into that third point, crowd numbers haven't been huge during the final series to date. Is it a chance to build momentum and tell some of the narratives of New Zealand versus Sydney coming up in the final series?
Well, maybe, but we're going to lose some of the attention. And the numbers have been down, and that's mostly because Cairns, New Zealand, Tassie just don't have the big stadiums like obviously Sydney do. Perth, Adelaide and the Melbourne teams, had they been in the playoffs as well. Fantastic to see New Zealand and Cairns there, by the way, and especially the way Cairns played. You just sort of... I finished watching their series and just having so much more respect for what they've done this season and what they did in that series, particularly without two starters. I thought they were great.
Well, let me pause you on Cairns and come back in a sec. And let's just stay on this final series for a second. New Zealand and Sydney, some great storylines there. Sydney going back-to-back. And New Zealand, after 2 years of being on the road, make it through the finals.
How good.
Can that carry through some crowd numbers in there?
Well, it'll be interesting. Game one is in Sydney. I mean, is that Friday? It might be a Friday.
Next week.
Yeah. So Friday night, it's hard in Sydney as well. Are you going to buy a ticket for game one when you know there's going to be a game three, potentially a game five if you're trying to prioritise? There's no doubt they'll be selling out in New Zealand. They're going to be so excited, and they should be because they've got just a really tough and exciting team, and they've got a legitimate chance. I think this is going to be a great series.
And how good. They're in the final series after being on the road for 2 years with COVID scenarios. I paused you on Cairns. Point 4, let's talk about Cairns' season. What an effort. 2 of your best 4 out, 2 starters out in Pinder and Scott, and still took an almighty swing at the Sydney Kings.
And won at home. That was a great win at home to force it into a game 3, but it was always going to catch up with them. It was going to be tough. You know that they'd played so many games in a short period of time, with obviously the playing games as well. 2 starters down, as you said, and Pinder particularly had that motor and the athleticism and the physicality that could actually do something against Sydney. Otherwise, some of the bigs and particularly Cooks was going to be able to do his thing. So, would have loved to have seen it with a full team. I think the fans would have as well.
And no doubt DJ Hoag's agent loved watching every minute, and the price kept going up. Point 5, the other team knocked out this week, Tasmania. Great system once again, right there in the precipice of the season, but couldn't quite get over the line against a tough New Zealand side.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it being a fairy tale last year. First year in, to then go to a grand final, and then second year to be able to back it up and finish above teams like Adelaide with all that talent, and Perth, both Melbourne teams. To be able to do that is a testament to their culture, their coach, the players they've recruited, the way they play together, and they've just got that resilience that is really difficult to be able to teach, but they've been able to do it, they've embraced it, they fight for Tassie, and the whole island should be so proud, and they are.
No doubt they are, and we mentioned with Cairns 2 players out, Josh Majette, a massive out for Tasmania, but how good's Milton Doyle? No doubt. They'll be rushing to re-sign him, but you mentioned the culture in Tassie. We look at this footage from Brent Costello, the captain Clint Steidl, out injured for a chunk of the season, but how good's this getting around a young fan? Obviously devastated, his jack jumper's getting knocked out.
He's travelled all the way from Tassie, right, to New Zealand. This is in New Zealand, and Clint Steidl would have been devastated losing this game 3 and not going to the final, but just took the time to give that young kid a bit of love. Good on him. And they just do things really well down there in Tassie, and I think that's why so many people around the nation, even though if they barrack for somebody else, it's almost like Tassie's your second favourite team, just because of the way they go about it and they fight. So well done to them of what they've done on and off the court.
The thing is, Steindl's seen him upset. He's come back and grabbed his game shoes, given him his game shoes. Go get him a Steindl jersey. The guy's wearing a McVeigh jersey. Hook him up with one of your own, Clint. Anyway, they're the big issues this week for the TCL starting 5. Moving into points made, brought to you by UPCOZ, and that means it's time for Derek Rucker to join us. Derek, it's great to have you once again.
Mate, what about all the money? Get straight to the money.
I just saw him counting them there after calling Tasmania
in game 2. Is that a new penthouse, mate, that he's got after his big bet?
It is, and what a fantastic call that was, Hammer. And I appreciate you for honoring me, acknowledging how accurate that prediction was. Tasmania by 11, baby. Let's go.
I love how quickly you got that on socials after the result was out, Derek. It's great to have you back now for points made. And gents, let's jump into this first one. Kevin Durant's quote around player trade requests, essentially saying that's all part of it. There it is. When a player can kind of dictate where he wants to go and leave in free agency or demand a trade, it's just a part of the game now. So I don't think it's a bad thing. It's bringing more and more excitement to the game. Gents, your thoughts, Shane?
Well, let's go to D first, because he's got his own story of getting out of a contract, as did I.
Man, this is tough, and I do not want to sound like a hypocrite, but in 1998, I had 3 years to go on my contract in Townsville, and I had enough, Hammer. I couldn't live up there anymore. We were not quite advancing as much as I wanted to. So I positioned and postured my way out of my contract. In fact, I went in and said to the owner, I'm not playing here anymore. You'll have to rip up my contract, which he did, to his credit. And in this instance, Hammer, we both went on to better things. So it works out well. I'm not against what Durant says here, but at the same time, I understand the frustrations from fans of those teams that he leads.
Well, I think the other thing is that, let's put it back to the NBL. I think there should be trades. So in your situation with 3 years to go on your contract, you go, they should have got something back in return for you changing your mind about where you wanted to be able to go. And I think if we did that and the players agreed to trades, and that's got to be the final tick because the money's not the same in the NBL as the NBA, I think it'd make a great element that we don't have at the moment, boys.
The question is the impact on the league, though. Charles Barkley comes out and talks about how the NBA are heading for a lockout because of this scenario.
Tough to say what's going to happen here. I don't know if a lockout is bound to happen over this situation. Guys are going to do what they got to do, especially the ones that have the bargaining position and have that power to make things happen to their benefit. But I think the bigger issue is the load management and players sitting out, especially when you only play in certain locations once a year. I think that's a bigger threat to the integrity of the game than this issue is. And Shane, I don't know. I'm not sure if you agree, but that really bothers me when you don't know who's going to play on any given night.
No doubt. If you're a fan that's saved up to be able to go and watch LeBron play, and he's probably not the right example because he's one of the best about being able to play as many games as he can, but there's certain players around the league that don't want to play back-to-back. And sometimes it's the scientists, sometimes it's the players. But I agree, it's a problem that's going to get addressed and it has to happen pretty quickly.
The scientists? What scientists?
They're the people that, they're the ones that are saying it. They're the people in the science department that are saying, no, you can't do this. Your body can't do this. And then you've got the older guys like Charles Barkley and Magic Johnson and the guys that come out and say, what are you talking about? We played 82 games a year. And now the science is saying that for the loading, they can't do that. It's no different than us in the NBL, where you've got somebody from the science department that comes and says they can only play 18 minutes tonight, not 19, it's 18 tonight.
One guy that looks unlikely he'll be playing, and we know it, is Ben Simmons. Jacques Vaughan comes out and says 10 to 15 years from now, you'll know that I was honest with you, talking about he can't find a way to play him at the Brooklyn Nets as they're currently structured. Derek, your thoughts on that?
Well, that's some good, honest, tough love from a fatherly figure in Jacques Vaughan, who has quite established himself as an NBA player. So let's not forget that, Hammer. He knows what he's talking about. But right now, he's saying he cannot find a context in which Ben Simmons benefits that team, which is really tough news to take. Jacques Vaughan basically is saying, as long as I'm here, I don't have a spot for you. Now, this is the moment. There's a bit more stability with the Brooklyn Nets. They have a pretty good idea what their lineup's going to look like, Hammer. Now, this offseason, Ben Simmons has to be committed to becoming a better basketball player. I don't care what it is. It could be physically working on his shot, working on some new moves. It could be mentally working on his toughness, doing anything that's required to make sure that he's in a better frame of mind going into next season. Maybe, as one of our colleagues, Andrew Gaze, has suggested, it's coming back into the Boomers fold, whereby Drewy claims he can get some good support and he's allowed to thrive as a player. That's how I see it all right now for Ben Simmons.
Well, I love the fact that Jacques Vaughan's actually given him some home truths, but now it's going to be up to Ben. Do you play the victim with that, or do you actually take that feedback and go and do the work that you're talking about? Because we've been waiting for that for a couple of years. When he left Philly, we thought he was going back to the lab, he was going to build his shot, he was working on his skills, working on that mental side to be able to come out and be the player that we all know that he's capable of being able to do. Right now, everyone keeps talking about him playing for the Boomers. But would he make the Boomers? Is he going to be better? Like, would you play him over Josh Green or Matisse Thybulle? Right now, they've built a culture of success to be able to win that medal. So for me, he has to be able to prove himself that he's going to breathe a whole lot of positivity back into that Boomers lineup before you just throw him that and think that he's going to be able to add to the team.
And Nathan, let me jump in here because that sounds crazy that you say that, Hammer. Would you pick Ben Simmons over Matisse Thybulle or over Josh Green? It sounds crazy, and I just thought, what are you talking about? But now after thinking about it and thinking about the significant role that Thybulle played in getting that medal, wow, I mean, that would be a really tough decision. Ben would have to buy into a whole lot of conditions that he probably isn't used to, and that may come as a surprise to him. So, wow, that is some serious food for thought.
Sign of where Ben's career is at the moment, definitely at the crossroads. Now, the other one that was at the crossroads was a series between the Kings and the Cairns Taipans. And a crucial call in Game 2, the NBL came out, so they made a mistake. Quatnoy called for a flop warning after he got bopped in the nose doing it. Were the refs intimidated by Sydney after that incident in Cairns? Shane, your thoughts?
Oh, of course they were intimidated, and Chase Buford did what he needed to do to be able to grandstand, be able to abuse the refs and get thrown out of the game to be able to grandstand for Game 3. He wasn't worried about getting thrown out here. He just wanted to have some sort of impact to make sure that they got the calls. And you know what, D? It worked. If you were watching that first half, they got all the calls, and they did a good job because they were aggressive. They knew they were going to get some calls, and Cooks and those guys, they put the ball on the floor. They had a big advantage from the free throw line. They used it to their advantage. They did a good job. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out for Game 1 of the Grand Final Series against a tougher opponent.
Well, Shane, I said at the end of Game 2, in case you didn't notice, I was actually up there in Cairns. I'm in touch with the players. I get down there and dirty with them. I go through the experience just as they do. So check this out. I said it was the team that adjusted to the quick whistle in Game 3 that would benefit. And Xavier Cooks, to his credit, was really, really smart. You may put it onto Chase Buford intimidating the referees. I'm not going to go that far. But certainly when you make a statement like that, it must, from a human point of view, it must have impact on those referees. Now, the other thing is, I always find it amusing when leagues come out and say that they made this mistake. Well, that's great. I see the NBA does it all the time. But how does that make me feel better? What I would like to see the NBA do is say, give $200,000 to the team that was aggrieved. Because, you can't feel any better, but money does cure a lot of hurt, Hammer, as you very well know.
Wow.
Well, there is points made, but we do have one more point to make. We're coming off the NBA All-Star Weekend, and the great Cal Bruton put on his socials this week a little throwback to the NBL All-Star game. You see a young Derek Rucker, young Shane Hill down the front. Any memories from this weekend, Derek?
Yeah, plenty. I mean, I can't remember the whole weekend, obviously, but I would love to be that guy again. Who is he? He had hair. He had his whole life in front of him. He wasn't bitter and jaded by life. Look at that, Hammer. What a great weekend that was. The Perth Hilton, 1990.
I can't even remember what I did on the court. I don't think I did much at all. I know I won the three-point shootout for the only time I did in my career. But, good memories. My better memories of All-Star Weekend was when we played together, D, and we tore it up. Yeah. Don't worry about that.
No doubt. Great times. I hope the All-Star game comes back. Hammer, actually, I have not watched a second of NBA All-Star Weekend yet. And I don't think I will see a single moment. But I'm watching plenty of Joe Healy's updates and her posts and her stories. It looks like JoJo is having a fantastic time.
I think JoJo's doing just fine. And they're the big points made this week, thanks to our friends at UPCOZ. In Depth brought to you by our friends at 2K23, and this week it's my absolute pleasure to introduce the brand new head coach of the Brisbane Bullets, Justin Schuler. Jay, congratulations, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
Well done, mate. Congrats. But before we get going, Stremple said he used to play juniors with you. He was the superstar and you were at the end of the bench, he reckons. Is that right?
No, that's the biggest lie I've heard in a long time. He definitely didn't like passing it. But no, we had some good times back in the day, some good teams. It was good fun.
Well, the actual truth of it is we'd wrestle, Justin and I would both be on the bench, and we just wrestled to see who could sit closer to the coach to try and get in their ear, tell them what to do. And he's stronger than me, he sat closer. But Jay, let's start with that, because it was 20 years ago that you retired early as a player. You're playing NBL 1 and went to full-time coaching in country town, little old Adelaide. And 20 years later, you fulfill your dream. You're an NBL head coach. It must mean a bit to you.
Yeah, it's definitely not a straight path when you go on a coaching journey. And, back then you're always trying to advance as quick as you can. And, my journey's taken me down to Tassie through the Institute of Sport down there. It's a big country. Dino comes along, puts me on the Melbourne United staff and had 7 great years there. So it's been an awesome journey. One, being able to coach the national team for as long as I have, and all the athletes that I've worked with at that tier, like how many people kind of reached out when the announcement came out was quite humbling, and yeah, took me by surprise, really. How many people you've reached over the years. So no, it's a great honour and opportunity, and yeah, really look forward to moving this program forward.
Mate, talk to us about the process once Brisbane reached out, what the talk was with management, what their vision is for you to be able to accept this job.
Yeah, like it was a pretty thorough process, to be honest. Multiple conversations. Had the opportunity to meet with Schuler when he was out here on his visit as part of the review process. And then from there, yeah, presentation and once a couple times through the selection panel and then meeting with ownership. So look, the vision is one of 100% moving forward. You know, what's happened has happened, and one of my big mottos is, you know, like a bullet can't go anywhere bar forward. You know, it's how it's designed to operate, and that's how we've got to operate from here on out. So, you know, being able to work hand in hand with how management want this team to be built, but also the bigger vision of, you know, becoming an Olympic city and what that means for our sport in particular, but you know, what the Bullets can do in that city in the lead up to the Olympics is going to be a special thing.
Jay, I love that. Right on brand with analogies about the Bullet already. You talked about the people you've touched throughout the journey. You go in with just Baines and Sobe signed. DJ Mitchell just came out that the club have taken up the club option there. You talk about the people you touched on the journey. Is that something that helps you in terms of recruiting and putting a group together when you think of guys you've been involved with over the last 20 years?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, it was a big part of my role at Melbourne United was the link to the Australian talent coming through. But, you know, I've always had a thing where you're an athlete for a moment, a friend for life. And I guess, you know, when you coach those junior national teams, you're helping young men become young adults and taking them through a journey which is quite unique. So having that experience with them, I know it will put us in good position to be able to target the best young talent coming out. And, you know, the other part to that is just how much great Queensland talent there is right now. You know, I was fortunate to have two of those boys on this last Crocs group, you know, that had really good tournaments. Josh Hughes, unfortunately, was injured through that one. And, you know, but Rocco and Roman, you know, there's just so much Queensland talent. So it'll be exciting to see what we can do with it over the coming years.
Mate, I know you can't look backwards too much, but how much did you analyse what happened this year to be able to work out the direction you want to be able to go so history doesn't repeat itself at the same time?
No, absolutely. I think, you know, making sure you come in and understand the whys on everything is really what my first couple of weeks here have been about. You know, figuring out why we've had guys, you know, off the floor so much, why hasn't chemistry worked, where are the gaps in our program to be able to generate a sustainable program, not just one that wins now, but one that wins well into the future. And so that's all been part of my process these first 2 weeks. But then it's also about, well, what does this roster really need? And, you know, there's no shortage of understanding that we need a point guard, we need a blue chip point guard to go with Sobe and Baines. You know, I refer often to the 2014 Spurs team, which I think plays the best style of basketball you've ever seen. And, you know, we've got a Tim Duncan, we've got a Ginobili, we've just got to find out our Tony Parker. And I think if we can do well in that space, we can really turn things around quickly.
Talk about a blue chip point guard. So you're alluding to Nathan Sobe playing more at the two, whereas he's played the one over the last few years?
Yeah, like, you know, we'll figure that out as the roster fleshes out. But one of the things being in charge of defensive scouts in Melbourne is, you know, dealing with Sobe off the ball, coming downhill quick in transition and in pace. So, you know, trying to find as many avenues that we can put him in positions of success are going to be key for us. So I think there's that. Definitely there's going to be an opportunity for him to carry as well. But I think a facilitator is definitely what this group needs moving forward.
No doubt you've done a great apprenticeship under one of the best coaches in the country with Dean Vickerman. But what have you learnt, and what sort of style do you think you will be able to take when it's your team? When you're in the hot seat, when you're dictating the terms, what's that going to look like for you?
Yeah, it's been an absolute privilege to work under Dino for so long, and, you know, just the trust he always was able to give me and instill in me, is something I want to carry forward with the staff that I'll put together. And his ability to take information from everyone and then really get to the finite point, I think, is a huge skill that he has. And the championship success I was able to enjoy at Melbourne was built on the defensive end of the ball. And you look at this year's championship run, like every team that is great at the defensive end has an opportunity to go win a championship. So that's definitely where we're going to start the build of this roster and look at guys that naturally have that about them. But then to me, it's not one or two guys that get it done at the offensive end either. It's about team ball. It's about how we share it and use the assets that we have. So again, having a Baines, a Sobe already on roster, there's two key pieces to really build that into the floor around. So I look forward to changing our style of play to a point, and trying to instill those habits, those championship habits, those winning habits on a daily basis. Because I think even this year's Bullets roster had so much talent with it. It's just how you untap that to get the results that you want.
Can you speak to that at all with free agency approaching? Justin, you had Gorjok Gak have some really big moments this season. Tyrell Harrison injured a lot. Both those guys unsigned. You've got Tyler Johnson, Jason Kadee out of contract. Can you speak to a little bit of some of the targets outside of that blue chip point guard?
Yeah, for sure. Like, Tanner Krebs is one that I've had a long history with, and someone that, you look at how his years have gone, and, he's played in the four, he's played as a wing. To me, having guys really understand their role and lock into those spots is going to be the critical part. So for Tanner, that 3-and-D type player is what we need. Can he be that guy? That's what we've got to evaluate. Tyrell Harrison's data is off the chart when he's on the floor. Can we, find a way to help him stay healthy would be a critical piece as well. But, for us right now, it's just going through scaling the entire, free agency list and making sure that we really do stay true to where we want to build this group. And that's about, how great a defensive team we can be, how efficient we can be at the offensive end. And if we need to make change on personnel, we'll do so. But, we'll take our time to really flesh that one out.
Well, it's a big challenge, mate, and we need a successful team in Brisbane, so no pressure there, but you're the right man for the job. Congrats, and I can't wait for you to be able to pull this roster together and see how you go next year.
All the best, Justin.
Thank you, and anytime, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for coming, mate. No doubt John Catt will be proud. Justin Schuler there, the brand new head coach of the Brisbane Bullets, and that's in-depth care of 2K23. That's all we've got time for this week. Big thank you to our friends that make it possible. TCL, 2K23, UPCOZ. Check out UPCOZ.com for all your odds second half of the NBA season. NBL finals coming up.
Yep.
Shout out to News Corp, KO Freebies, and Shane.
It's all happening. We'll see you next week.
Good times in basketball. Joe Healy will be back. I'm Nathan Strimple, and that was The Basketball Show.
This is a co-production by News Corp Australia and Closer Sports.